Further debate. A member from Guelph.
Thanks, Speaker. I rise to speak on Bill 115, the beer bill. But I don't really want to talk about beer right now. What I want to talk about is respect for the rule of law and responsible government. When I was elected as Ontario's first Green MPP, I thought I would be the big disruptor at Queen's Park. But now I feel like I'm the person talking about responsible government and the rule of law, because that's exactly what Bill 115 undermines. It says, and I'm a small business owner, it says that a contract with the Government of Ontario is not worth the paper it's written on. I can't tell you how many business deals I did with a handshake or just even my word over the phone. We didn't even need a contract. My dad did million-dollar grain deals on our farm with his word because his word was his honor. He didn't need a contract. And now what we're saying to people around the world is that a contract in Ontario is not worth the paper it's written on. I just want to quote from the Ontario Chamber of Commerce, and I quote, "Cancelling a contract sends an alarming message to the business community in Ontario and beyond, which could potentially deter investment." And now today, the Ontario Chamber of Commerce, Neil Harrington, the Chamber's Senior Vice President, wrote, and I quote, "It is essential that this process be conducted in a manner that ensures the sanctity of existing contracts be honoured. Our strong concern is that terminating an existing contract and doing so without compensation risk sending a negative signal to the U.S. and other international investors about the business and investment climate in Ontario." Speaker, think about this for a second. That's from our largest trading partner, a country that just lifted steel and aluminum tariffs just a couple days ago, a country that we're trying to negotiate or renegotiate a trade deal with. That's a bit precarious right now whether or not that's actually going to happen, but it's going to be essential for Ontario's economy, and we have a government ripping up contracts and having the largest business organization in the United States sending letters questioning whether Ontario is a safe place to do business, whether we can still attract business investment to this province. And so the Premier can put up all the signs he wants. He can say we're open for business all he wants. But I guarantee you, Speaker, that actions speak louder than words. And the actions of this government with this bill sends the wrong signal. And we've already seen how irresponsible and reckless actions cost the people of Ontario. You know, the Premier interfered in the workings of Hydro One, and I would argue that, you know, the previous government's sell-off of Hydro One was a horrible decision, and then Hydro One made even a worse decision by doing a deal with Avista. But then when the Premier interfered with the operations of Hydro One, the Avista deal was cancelled by U.S. courts, and it's cost the people of Ontario well over $100 million. How fiscally irresponsible is that? And now we have people warning us that because of the contractual risk associated with Bill 115, that businesses may start asking and demanding of the province of Ontario sweetheart premiums in contracts with this government because they can't trust the government. What kind of signal is that sending, Speaker? Why are we exposing the people of Ontario to legal, financial, and reputational risk all over beer? Like beer. It's not as if you can't get beer in the province. I'm assuming most of us are going to watch the Raptors game tonight. Some of us might even have a beer while we watch the game. I have a feeling you're not going to have a problem finding one somewhere. But over the weekend, I checked Twitter, and it appeared that we had a beer crisis in Ontario. Like, I was worried for a second, Speaker. I was worried that the beer crisis had hit. It seemed like the entire government was out dealing with this crisis. Well, I wish the government would take some time to speak to the hundreds of thousands of young people marching every Friday to talk about the climate crisis. I wish they'd take some time to meet with frontline healthcare workers about the hallway medicine crisis. I wish they would talk about with the young person who pulled me aside the other day, talking about how he had to wait 18 months to get mental health supports, even though he was on suicide watch. Or maybe they could take some time to meet with the students that came to Queen's Park this afternoon from Guelph, students part of the Cadence program, an alternative high school program for at-risk youth, a program that these recent graduates said if it wasn't in place, they likely wouldn't have graduated from high school. And it's now on the chopping block because of the increase in class sizes. There are many, many crises that this government could have spent some time talking to people about, tweeting about, and dealing with over the weekend. But instead, it was about beer. So let's look at what their special advisor on alcohol sales had to say. And I want to remind members opposite and the people watching at home that the report from this advisor was just delivered on May 24, so that was, what, about 10 days ago? Certainly less than 2 weeks ago. But I want to quote the first 3 recommendations from their advisor, Ken Hughes. So number 1, he says, do everything possible under the Master Framework Agreement to authorize additional alcohol retail outlets. Consider other available options within its power that would provide ways to expand retail sales should negotiations prove unsuccessful. And the number 3 was take a phased approach to authorizing new retailers and beverage alcohol products available for sale. So none of that says rip up a contract. None of it says that we have a crisis. And yet, in less than 2 weeks, they've essentially ignored the recommendations of their hand-picked advisor and just ripped up the contract and moved full steam ahead. And I asked them why. Is it really worth it? Is it really worth it? So, you know what? It might be a bad deal. And I, Speaker, personally am not opposed to expanding beer sales. As a matter of fact, I ran a campaign a few years ago liberating local beer and received a cease and desist letter from Brewers Retail telling me to not use some of the language that some of the members opposite used today in the debate. It's a good thing they were in the chamber and said it, because I was out of the chamber when I said it. But the implications of what the government's doing goes far beyond beer. And so I want to close by just asking my colleagues from across the aisle. You were elected with a promise to expand beer sales. But you weren't elected to do it in a way that is reckless and irresponsible. You weren't elected to do it in a way that undermines the rule of law. You weren't elected in a way that threatens business investment in this province, that threatens our trading relationships with our largest trading partners. So why don't we go about this in a responsible way? I think you have an opportunity to say, you know what, we are going to listen to our advisor. We're going to take the time to negotiate. And if we can't negotiate our way out of this deal, then we'll start putting in place the building blocks that we need to deal with this over 6 years. And one of those building blocks, and I want to close on this, is the bottle return program for Brewers Retail is one of the most successful environmental programs in the province. One of the members opposite actually just introduced a bill today about Litter Day. Well, one of the best ways we can reduce litter in this province is to expand the bottle return program, not actually bring forward legislation that threatens the bottle return program. So if you spent the extra few years actually negotiating it, maybe we could have a pathway to ensuring whatever new framework is in place actually has a solid bottle return program. So I encourage the members opposite to reconsider their position on this bill, say no today, and protect the rule of law.